One, in continuation to my previous video on My Mother at 66 poem written by Kamala, this video is having few important questions with answers. Before we move on to the questions, I have provided a list of words that can be a bit confusing to few of the learners, and their meanings are also given. In the opening lines, poet has used the phrase beside me. That means near me or next to me. Word doze means short nap or sleep. Ashen, from ash the word has come. It is pale gray or dull like ash. Corpse refers to a dead body. Put that thought away means distracting oneself from the thought that is going on in one's mind. Sprinting is speedily running or running fast. Spilling out, running out, moving out quickly. Security check. It is actually a process of checking a person who is entering in is not armed or carrying something dangerous to harm people or the place. Yards, it is a unit of linear distance or length. It is equal to 3 feet. Wan refers to colorless or pale or weak or ashen or pallid. Pale, containing little color. Usually when a person is ill and weak, he has pale complexion. Familiar, known from long association. Ache means pain, and amma is in local language addressed to a mother. There are few important things one has to remember because many a times while referring to different one marker questions in reference to context category, they can come up. So the poem is having no rhyme scheme. It is written in a blank verse. Means it is actually a long sentence punctuated by commas. The poem indicates a single thread of thought, and in this particular case, we are talking about a fear of loss of a parent or a fear of being separated from a parent. This very single idea, the poet has tried to mix with the observations of the real world around, either to express the contrast or to highlight similar. The theme is universal as the fear of loss of a parent is felt by every child. It can be felt by anyone around the world. Now, we are having few NCERT questions that have been given in the textbook. The answers that have been provided here, we have to remember these are just those value points, not exactly the same sentence formation you have to memorize. Value points, if you remember, you can write down the answer the way you want to write. First question, what is the kind of pain and ache that the poet feels? Now, if you remember, this actually comes up when immediately the poem opens. Poem opens with mother traveling with the daughter in the car and mother dozes off. Looking at dozing mother, poet is having this pain. Now, what was there that made her go through this pain? Now, looking at her weak, pale mother, who is taking nap beside her in car, the poet realizes that her mother is old and inching towards death. This realization of mother being old and inching towards death actually makes her feel the pain. Why are the young trees described as sprinting? You have to remember trees sprinting, young trees sprinting. When the poet had referred to, we are to remember in mind that trees, they cannot move from their place. It is actually the car that is moving. And when we look outside, it appears to us as if we are not moving and the trees are moving. So, the very same image poet has tried to bring in our mind. The trees have been referred as living beings, as human beings, as if they are running fast. Just because trees have been considered as persons, that's why personification device is used here. And the answer goes like this: personified trees appear to be running fast and full of energy in comparison to old weak mother. From a speedily moving car, the trees appear to be sprinting and full of energy. Next question: why has the poet brought in the image of the merry children spilling out of their homes? Basically, in the poem, when poet had looked at her mother, old and closing towards death, she wants to distract herself. So she looks outside, and outside she comes across opposite images. So if we have a look, the first opposite image was of young trees sprinting, and this one is the second. So through the image of happy children running out of their homes, the poet tries to show the contrast. The happiness, enthusiasm, and energy of the children is opposite to the state her mother is in. Why has the mother been compared to the late winter's moon? Through this simile, late winter's moon, the poem was having a line: worn pale as late winter's moon. The minute we use the word as or like, it becomes a simile. So, through this simile, the poet is trying to tell that the way winter's moon is dull and lusterless, similar is her mother's stage. Both moon and her mother are in the last stage of their cycle. The winter being the last stage of seasonal cycle, while old age is the last stage of human life. Last question of textbook. What do the parting words of the poet and her smile signify? Now, in case the question is what are the parting words, you have to remember, see you soon, Amma. But here the question is not asking what are the parting words, so we are not going to refer to them, but we will tell what do these parting words signify. Poet's parting words reflect her optimism, her hope of seeing her mother alive during next visit also. And her smile, because while referring to smile, she had used the word smile thrice in the poem. It means poetic device used there is repetition. So we are saying through repetition of word smile, the poet emphasizes her feelings of hiding her fear and pain and facing the situation bravely by showing hopefulness of seeing her mother. Now, here are few extra questions, that is short answer type questions, 30 to 40 words. From poem, we can have reference to context as well as short answer type questions. So I have provided few short answer type questions that will cover all major points of the poem. First one: how did Kamala Das's mother look during the drive to Cochin? Poet's mother, while dozing, had open mouth and her face was pale and dull. What image came into the mind of the poet when she looked at her sleeping mother? Looking at her sleeping mother and seeing her pale and dull face, the image of a corpse, a dead body, comes in the mind of the poet. What kind of images has Kamala Das used to signify her mother's aging decay? She uses two images, one the image of a corpse and second one of late winter's moon. Which poetic device has the poet used while referring to the images of corpse or late winter's moon? In both the cases, she has used simile. What contrast of images has the poet used in the poem? Now, for mother, she had used corpse and late winter's moon. Contrast is actually old age. to youth. So she defines the decaying old age with the help of images of corpse and late winter's moon. And in contrast to this old age, youth is expressed through images of young trees sprinting and merry children spilling out. What was the poet's fear as a child? Why does it surface when she is going to the airport? The poet's childhood fear was losing her mother or being separated from her mother. This fear of losing her mother resurfaces. We are using the word resurfaces because even in childhood she had felt the same. Resurfaces when she sees her sleeping mother who has pale and dull face. Immediately, the thought of a corpse or a dead body comes into her mind. Then she realizes that her mother is old and nearing death. That's why resurfacing the fear. What childhood fear did Kamala Das refer to in her poem, and how did she hide it? She refers to the fear of loss of parent, in this particular case, mother. And she hides this fear by smiling and expressing her hope or optimism by saying to her mother, "See you soon, Amma." Now, these were few short answer type question, and roughly they covered the complete poem's concept also. Now we are going to have few reference to context type questions with answers. As you can see, I have provided the lines from the poem on the top for reference purpose, and questions have been given below. If you have a look, the minute you go through these very questions again, indirectly the whole poem is revised thoroughly. So opening lines, the questions refer to who is the poet or where was she heading to. You have to remember Cochin word is given in this, but somewhere later in the poem the poet has used at airport. So we won't just write down to Cochin, we will have to remember it is Cochin airport. And how did the poet's mother look like? She has mentioned those open mouth, face ashen like that of a corpse. So from these two lines we can divide. And the next one, poetic device. Have a look at the last line. Ashen like that of a corpse. Word like is used, it means it is a simile. Lines, and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked, but soon put that thought away. So, what brought the realization? Mother's pale, dull face. What emotion did the realization evoke? The emotion is the fear of loss, fear of separation. And how did she deal with this? She tried to get distracted. And what was the thought she wanted to put away? The thought of a mother being old and nearing death. And looked out at young trees sprinting, the merry children spilling out of their homes. But after the airport security check, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her. Why did the poet look out? Because looking at her mother sleeping with open mouth and pale face, she is reminded of death. So she wants to distract and she looks outside and sees the contrast. So, what is the contrast that she sees? The contrast is talking about inside the car decaying and sadness, while outside filled with energy, vitality, youth, enthusiasm, and happiness. What do young trees signify? Because they are young and they are sprinting. So they are signifying youth, energy, vitality, and enthusiasm. And where was the poet standing? She is standing few yards away from airport security check. Now, last lines of the poem. worn pale as a late winter's moon, and felt that old familiar ache. My childhood's fear, but all I said was, "See you soon, Amma." All I did was smile and smile and smile. So, description of the mother. We're back to square one. Earlier case, face ashen. The same idea is repeated here. Worn, pale. Two words you remember, and answer is there. Weak, dull, lusterless. And what is the old familiar? Fear of loss of parent or being separated from a parent. And why is this familiar? This has been known to her for many years because this very fear she had felt in her childhood also. And what resurfaces this emotion? Looking again at her mother's pale face. From the same line, we have few more questions. What were the poet's parting words to her mother? Parting words were, "See you soon, Amma." How did the poet reassure her mother and actually herself? By smiling and saying the words, filled with hope and optimism. And poetic device used, if we have a look at the last lines, actually we are having in the last line repetition, smile, smile, and smile. While in the first line, we are having as a late winter's moon, that is a simile. With this, poem's major areas are covered, and I hope these questions, additional questions, will help you understand the poem and write down better answers. Thank you. Happy learning.